While male criminals often dominate headlines, female crime lords have built empires that rival their counterparts in brutality and scope. They've orchestrated murders, controlled vast drug networks, and commanded respect through fear, all while hiding behind carefully crafted public personas. Today, we expose the psychological makeup of history's most ruthless female crime bosses, women who conquered male-dominated criminal worlds through calculated violence and strategic brilliance. Ever wonder how a gentle smile can mask a merciless killer? From drug queenpin Griselda Blanco to cartel leader Sandra Avila Beltran, we'll analyze the minds behind these criminal empires. Prepare for a journey into the shadowy world where feminine charm meets tactical ruthlessness. Griselda Blanco wasn't simply another name in the cocaine trade. She pioneered methods of murder so extreme that even hardened cartel members struggled to stomach them. Born in 1943 in the slums of Medellin, Colombia, Blanco's childhood laid the psychological foundation for what would become one of the most violent criminal careers on record. Her brutal beginnings started early. By age 11, Blanco had already committed her first murder, kidnapping and shooting a child from a wealthy neighborhood when the ransom failed to arrive. This violence occurred amid extreme poverty and abuse, normalizing brutality at a formative age. Like a spider weaving its first web, these early experiences shaped the calculated predator she would become. When Blanco moved to the United States in the 1970s, she established cocaine trafficking routes between Colombia and major American cities, primarily Miami and New York. Law enforcement records document over 200 murders directly linked to her orders, with the actual number likely exceeding 250, according to former DEA agent Michael Corleone, who spent 7 years building a case against her. What made Blanco unique was the number of kills, Corleone stated in his testimony. It was how she maintained two completely separate personas. To her children, she was a loving, attentive mother who never missed a birthday. Hours after hosting a family dinner, she would calmly order the execution of entire families. Blanco's most significant contribution to murder methodology came through motorcycle assassinations. She pioneered the technique of using motorcycle riders who would pull alongside victims' vehicles, shoot with precision, and speed away before witnesses could react. This method became her trademark and spread throughout Latin America's criminal underworld. Forensic psychologists identified classic markers of psychopathy in Blanco: superficial charm, pathological lying, manipulative behavior, and complete absence of remorse. Unlike many psychopaths, however, she maintained genuine emotional connections with her children while compartmentalizing her criminal activities. At her peak in the early 1980s, Blanco's cocaine empire generated approximately $80 million monthly. This wealth purchased protection from authorities and rivals alike. She owned numerous properties, including a Miami mansion, where she hosted lavish parties for corrupt officials and partners, often within days of ordering brutal executions. Former DEA investigators documented multiple instances where Blanco personally executed individuals, including 3 of her husbands. The third husband's murder occurred at a restaurant in Bogotá, where she shot him twice in the face before calmly walking past stunned patrons. Court psychologists concluded that Blanco possessed an unusual combination of genuine maternal instinct alongside sadistic pleasure and violence. She demonstrated loving behavior toward her own children while ordering the murders of others, including pregnant women and children. Following successful assassinations, Blanco often celebrated, recounting details to her inner circle with what witnesses described as joy. Blanco's empire eventually crumbled with her arrest in 1985, though she continued operations from prison until her deportation to Colombia in 2004. Her methods lived on as a new generation of female crime lords studied and adopted her techniques. The psychological profile created of Blanco serves as a template for understanding similar criminals, demonstrating how compartmentalization allows extreme violence to coexist with normal family relationships and how gender stereotypes become weapons. In 2012, at age 69, Blanco met her end through the very method she had pioneered, shot twice by a motorcycle assassin as she left a butcher shop in Medellin. What separates female crime lords from their male counterparts extends far beyond gender. Their approach to violence functions as a calculated business strategy rather than a display of power. They transformed brutality into a precise tool, wielded with surgical precision rather than blunt force. Criminal psychologist Dr. Elena Vasquez studied 27 cases of high-ranking female crime leaders spanning 3 decades. Her findings revealed a consistent pattern. These women created elaborate public personas as respected business figures, community leaders, and philanthropists. Sandra Avila Beltran, the Queen of the Pacific, masqueraded as a cosmetics entrepreneur while controlling billion-dollar drug shipments between Colombia and Mexico. By day, she cut ribbons at charity events. By night, she ordered executions of those threatening her business. Similarly, Judy Moncada built her reputation as a Medellin real estate developer in the 1990s, attending community center openings in the morning, then directing assassination squads after lunch. Talk about work-life balance. The disconnect between her public and private lives was so complete that many legitimate business partners refused to believe the charges, noted the prosecutor who finally arrested Moncada in 1998. These women weaponized gender stereotypes to their advantage. DEA agent Robert Coleman admitted in his memoir, "We wasted years looking for men we assumed were running these operations. The women were hiding in plain sight because we couldn't conceive they would order such violence." Unlike their male counterparts who built expansive networks through fear, female crime lords maintained smaller, tighter circles based on unwavering loyalty. Thelma Wright ran Philadelphia's heroin trade with just 11 direct employees. All 11 survived her entire criminal career, unlike high turnover in male operations. This created loyalty that money alone couldn't buy. Court records show these women frequently used sexuality as both weapon and shield, creating complex relationships with male subordinates. One federal informant testified, "You didn't just fear disappointing her. You craved her approval. It created deeper control than fear alone." Their strategic approach to violence differed significantly from male bosses. Rather than public displays of brutality, they preferred private, methodical elimination of threats. Griselda Blanco never publicly acknowledged ordering hits, instead letting rumors spread naturally. This kept direct evidence minimal while maximizing fear. Even torture served specific strategic purposes. Maria Leon maintained a property in East Los Angeles, specifically designed for interrogation. Court documents describe soundproofed rooms with equipment for breaking victims mentally before physical harm began. Guadalupe Fernandez approached torture as a science, with a recovered flash drive revealing dozens of categorized videos studying the breaking of human beings. This calculating approach typically resulted in longer criminal careers. Female crime lords avoided flashy displays, lived modestly despite vast wealth, and maintained lower profiles. Enedina Arellano Felix ran portions of the Tijuana cartel for 15 years without a single police photograph, attending strategy meetings disguised as a secretary, while male lieutenants assumed she was staff. By treating violence as a business tool rather than a power demonstration, these women built criminal empires that often outlasted their male counterparts. They understood true power came from being feared by exactly the right people, while remaining invisible to everyone else. Their strategic brilliance transformed violence from a blunt instrument into a scalpel, cutting precisely where needed, while leaving minimal evidence behind. Few female crime lords began their criminal careers with the intention of becoming violent criminals. Their paths into organized crime reveal disturbing patterns about how personal trauma transforms into a drive for power and control. These women rarely sought criminal enterprise as a first choice, but rather entered this world through a series of events that gradually pulled them deeper into violence. Case files from federal investigations across 3 continents reveal a consistent pattern. Many notorious female crime bosses began as victims themselves. Maria Leon grew up in extreme poverty in rural Mexico before being trafficked to Los Angeles at age 15. By 30, she controlled drug distribution networks across Southern California and was linked to at least 17 murders. Court psychologists identified this victim-to-perpetrator pipeline in approximately 70% of female crime lord cases studied between 1970 and 2010. Emerging from the shadows of their past, these women forged empires from heartbreak and betrayal. For Judy Moncada, witnessing Pablo Escobar's men murder her husband became the catalyst that transformed her from grieving widow to ruthless operator. For Marjorie Chacon Russell, known as Queen of the South, being sexually assaulted by a business partner who believed she couldn't retaliate fundamentally altered her perception of violence, from something to fear to something to wield. Most female crime lords initially entered criminal operations through male partners or family members, learning from subordinate positions before strategically maneuvering into leadership. Sandra Avila Beltran exemplifies this pathway. Known as the Queen of the Pacific, she began as a girlfriend to high-ranking cartel members, observing operations from the periphery. Gradually, this peripheral involvement evolved into calculated criminal ambition. Using relationships with both Colombian and Mexican traffickers, she engineered a takeover of crucial drug routes between the two countries. By 2001, she controlled maritime shipments worth billions, having systematically replaced the men who introduced her to the trade. Psychological evaluations reveal most developed sophisticated compartmentalized thinking, separating their identities as mothers, community figures, and brutal criminals. Dr. Thomas Harlow, who interviewed 5 female cartel leaders, noted they discussed murder contracts in the same conversation as their children's education, with no apparent awareness of the contradiction. Unlike male crime lords who frequently inherited established operations, women typically built their organizations through strategic alliances. When Rosario Rita's brother was killed by rival gang members in Texas, she constructed her own network through careful recruitment and strategic violence, eventually controlling more territory than her brother ever did. Court testimonies reveal many female crime leaders were motivated primarily by revenge and a determination to never be vulnerable again. Thelma Wright took control of her husband's drug operation after his murder in 1991. According to witnesses, Wright's organization became significantly more brutal under her leadership. One stated, "Where her husband might beat someone for crossing him, Thelma would have them killed, along with family members as a message." This exploitation created a specific psychological profile distinct from male counterparts. DEA psychological analyst Rebecca Torres documented, "They didn't want wealth for status. They wanted it as insulation against vulnerability. They didn't want power to dominate others. They wanted it to ensure no one could ever dominate them again." Their stories demonstrate how criminal organizations function as perverse ladders of opportunity for those denied legitimate paths to security and power, creating a disturbing cycle where yesterday's victims become tomorrow's victimizers. Certain case files involving female crime lords contain details so disturbing that veteran investigators struggle to discuss them even decades later. These women orchestrated psychological destruction, followed by physical elimination. They understood that breaking someone mentally before physically would maximize suffering, developing this approach into a methodical craft rather than a business necessity. Female crime bosses demonstrated a particular talent for psychological targeting that distinguished their methods from male counterparts. DEA psychological profiler Martin Reynolds studied interrogation transcripts from 12 female cartel leaders between 1992 and 2015. His analysis revealed they routinely researched victims' personal fears and phobias before ordering hits. In one chilling example, a female boss who discovered a rival had severe claustrophobia arranged his kidnapping and imprisonment in a progressively smaller series of containers before his execution. Their methods consistently involved betrayal of trust or exploitation of relationships in ways male criminals rarely employed. They weaponized intimacy, using personal connections to lower victims' defenses before striking. FBI records from a 2005 investigation detailed how a female crime lord in Chicago infiltrated a rival family by befriending the wife, becoming godmother to their child, then using this access to gather intelligence that enabled the murder of the entire household. In Los Angeles during the 1990s and early 2000s, Maria La Chata Leon exemplified this approach. Court testimonies described how Leon ran a sophisticated drug distribution network while presenting herself as a neighborhood matriarch. She hosted community events and contributed to local schools. This carefully constructed persona gave her access to information and loyalty that strengthened her criminal empire. In one particularly calculated incident, FBI surveillance records captured Leon hosting a quinceañera for a local girl in 2003. 3 days later, she ordered the execution of the girl's father after discovering he had spoken to authorities. The murder occurred while he still carried a thank you card from Leon. Similarly disturbing, Enadina Arellano Felix of the Tijuana Cartel attended a baptism ceremony one morning in 2008, expressing warm sympathies to a business associate's wife. That same evening, she dispatched hit teams to abduct the woman. The victim was found 3 days later with evidence of extensive torture before her execution. Unlike the often impulsive violence of male counterparts, female crime lords displayed more patient, methodical approaches to revenge. Teresa Mendoza, who controlled drug routes through southern Spain, tracked a betrayer for 7 years across 3 continents before arranging his death in 2010. She purchased property near his new identity location 2 years before making her move to study his routines. Female-ordered hits frequently contained ritual elements or symbolic messages intended for specific audiences. Crime scene analysis from 12 cartel hits between 2006 and 2012 showed these executions contained specific symbolic elements meant to be understood by others in their criminal world. The most disturbing case emerged during a 2013 joint investigation. Authorities discovered a female cartel leader had maintained a specialized torture facility outside Nuevo Laredo for approximately 4 years. Unlike the public, chaotic displays of violence typical of male cartel leaders, this facility was clinically organized with medical equipment allowing victims to be kept alive for weeks while being methodically dismembered. Criminal psychologist Dr. Helen Morrison, who interviewed 3 incarcerated female cartel leaders, observed, "They approached violence as a specialized discipline. Where male leaders often engaged in escalating public displays, these women practiced violence as a dark art form, studying what broke people most effectively." This contrast between the theatrical brutality of male crime lords and the surgical precision of female violence represents the uniquely calculating nature of female-led criminal enterprises. The world of female crime lords reveals more than extreme brutality. It exposes a calculated intelligence that turned gender stereotypes into weapons. These women built criminal enterprises through strategic violence rather than impulsive displays of power. Their operations often outlasted male counterparts specifically because they understood the value of invisibility. Their psychological profiles reveal how trauma transforms victims into perpetrators, and how strategic thinking enables criminal success. These dark geniuses crafted empires through calculated precision, not chaotic violence. Don't forget to like the video, and if you want more deep dives into untold crime stories, hit subscribe and tap the bell now. See you next time.